What is going on, you guys? My name is Merce Gaming, and welcome back to the channel. Last week, we talked about my top 10 tips to help you survive and win in Warzone, where a lot of those tips require good communication with good teammates. Sometimes you get stuck with random teammates, and that's okay. Now, getting stuck with random teammates who are hot garbage can ruin the experience, so here are my top 10 ways to deal with crappy teammates. If you're returning to the channel, welcome back. If you're brand new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. Either way, please make sure you like this video and hit that subscribe button with the bell notification icon turned on. That way you know whenever I post a great video such as this, and that way it helps this channel grow. So before I start, I want to point out I am not the greatest Warzone player ever. Some of these tips will make me sound pretentious, but for me, it is borderline impossible to get halfway decent teammates when I play with random people. That's why I'm making these tips for those who are only playing with these kind of teammates. So with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Starting off with my number 10 tip, talk to them. You gotta talk to these randoms whether they respond or not. Chances are they're going to hear you. So make sure you're calling out when you see an enemy or you think you hear one nearby. And if you're playing on PC, use the in-game text chat feature to talk if all else fails. They'll see it for sure unless they've deliberately turned it off in settings, then you know they're the worst and there's no hope. Be clear with how you want to engage a gunfight. If you want to either talk about letting the enemies run or you want to play stealthy, you have to let them know. And ask for help when you need it. Randoms are usually terrible when helping you out naturally. They oftentimes will hear gunfire and think, oh, they've got it, better search for more loot, when really you're trying to take on a team of 3 by yourself. In addition, you have to dictate anything you're thinking. These people are not going to pick up on what you need. And finally, if you end up in the same gulag as your teammate, give them callouts. You can spectate from the top and tell them if the enemy is on their left or their right. It will help them a lot more, and it will help continue to push you guys towards the final circle. Moving on to tip number 9, and this is actually a pretty big one. Be the first to mark a drop zone. There should be little to no argument about an established place to drop once it's marked. If you have a teammate who decides they want to mark a different place to drop because their level 3 status makes them an expert, stick to your guns and drop on your marker. Many times your third teammate will go to the first marker established anyway. Oftentimes the person who deviates from the other teammates dies quickly. They'll learn to play cooperatively when they redeploy, and hopefully they'll be an asset when they come back. You have to take charge when playing with randoms. More often than not, teammates butt heads when there's no plan set in place and they get everybody killed.
We're not going downtown, are we?
Nah, no. I refuse to go downtown.
Yeah, not going downtown. Sorry. That's literally the worst spot in the game, man.
Oh, why'd you jump out? Who's dropping?
And finally, if all else fails, just listen to whomever is deemed to be the squad leader and respect where they mark. If you and your teammates just continue to argue at the beginning of the game where you're going to drop, there's little to no hope any of you are going to get things done. Just go to the first marker on the map and stick to it. Next, for tip number 8, is to ping everything. Yes, even that. Pinging items, locations, and players helps tremendously even when you're playing with a bag of sand as your teammate. Ping items you don't need or feel your teammates could use better than yourself, and ping anywhere you plan to travel on the map. This is huge so your teammates can know where you're planning on going and you're not leaving them behind. Ping any enemies you see before engaging. A good tip to use is to parachute slowly at the beginning of the match to ping as many enemies as possible so your teammates know where to avoid or where they might want to shoot. If you go down, try to ping any other enemies you see before you're eliminated. And if you're using the spotter perk, mark anything you can for your team to see. This can include trophy systems, claymores, and enemy loadout drops. If you're dead and you notice they're close to a buy station with enough cash to bring you back, ping it. They might not be actively thinking about buying you back at that point in time, so you pinging it out gives them a reminder and it tells them where to go. Pinging helps even the most brain-dead players realize what's going on around them and helps them know what you're trying to do. It helps them know if you need something, and it helps them know if they should be picking up a certain piece of equipment or where an enemy is. Moving on to tip number 7 is to stay close to these teammates. I know this tip is pretty obvious to a lot of people, but to those who play with randoms, you definitely know where I'm coming from with this, so staying with these teammates helps you guys win more games. These players can be unpredictable, including when getting engaged in a gunfight. When possible, you need to hover over them a little bit just to make sure they're not walking into perilous danger or anything like that. Staying close also means you can quickly revive them when they inevitably go down and help save them in gunfights. They might also miss a lot of loot and never even ping it out, so staying close to these teammates ensures you don't miss it. Next is tip number 6, and that is to monitor their in-game stats at the bottom left of the screen. Just be the mom of the group, make sure everyone has their armor on, and make sure you know if someone might be carrying too much cash. Just keep a close eye on how much cash everyone has. You can work to pool everyone's money together and put it to good use. Give any extra armor to someone who doesn't have at least 3 equipped. It's a really good idea to do this because if they go down because they didn't have any armor, you might die trying to revive them. Keep an eye out if any of your teammates are firing at something. You will usually see a fire icon next to their name whenever this happens. You can tell either if they're engaged in a gunfight or if they see an enemy without pinging them out. And finally, you can also know if a teammate is parachuting in, if they're in the gulag, or if they're totally dead, or if they left the game because you know they will. Alright, we are halfway through the video, moving on to tip number 5, and that is to close doors that your teammates leave open. Not only do doors signal that someone has been there if someone is walking by, but they leave you exposed to enemies. Closing doors can also give your teammates an audio cue if an enemy has approached when it bangs or creaks open. You can try to close them quietly by slowly walking into the door to close it. You can crouch walk it closed and not actually press the action button. Hopefully your teammates will get the idea after you've done it enough times, but always make sure the door gets closed. Next up for tip number 4 is to complete contracts. These teammates could be dying a lot. You're going to need some serious cash. Completing contracts gets you a steady flow of income, so you can buy things such as self-revive, so you can take care of yourself. You can buy UAVs, so your teammates hopefully won't go down as easily, and you can buy loadout drops to get everyone equipped at the beginning of the game. Completing contracts also helps teammates who do nothing but camp get a move on. Completing scavenger missions will help you get some better loot so your teammates have a higher chance of surviving. Recon missions, these are great. They will let you and your team circle peek so they won't get killed in the gases easily. Honestly, I recommend just be careful about doing bounty missions. Your bounty target is probably with their teammates, who will of course be so godlike you guys could get laser beamed, or they're probably cheaters. So I honestly say if you're really trying to get contracts done, maybe skip the bounties, but try to do recons and scavengers. All right, we are in the top 3 tips. So for tip number 3, if you're dead, at least be useful. Either through talking in-game or using the text feature, try to call out tips as your teammates play if you're spectating. If they're doing things like aiming down their sniper scope for too long, you can do something like remind them nicely about the scope glint that could be giving them away. If they're looting, be sure to point out valuable items they may have missed. They may be more concentrated on finding one item in particular or listening for enemies, so they could be walking over good loot without even knowing about it. Make sure to let them know if they haven't equipped their armor if they have any in their inventory, or for things like using a heartbeat sensor occasionally if they have it. Again, they are concentrating on a lot of stuff at that point. If they're not doing these things, it doesn't necessarily mean they're bad, but they might not be actively thinking about it, so you can just give them a friendly reminder. All of these things are going to make you sound like the most annoying person in the world, but to be honest, who cares if you're aiming for a win? Just do it. Since you're dead, it's easier for you to look at the minimap for extended durations. You can use this time to ping enemies on the map you see firing. This way your teammate will know exactly where it's coming from. You can also ping enemy vehicles a little bit before they pop up on your teammate's map. I know I had this tip in my last video to help you personally survive longer, but this is a very relevant tip for this topic as well. All right, our second highest tip on this list, it's going to make me sound really selfish. Tip number 2 is to use your teammates as bait. Let me explain. If they're just running all over the place like crazy the entire match, at least let them do it in front of you. Just like in multiplayer, sometimes your teammate's death can be your benefit to knowing where an enemy is at. You can let your teammates walk in front of you so you know your immediate path is safe. You can let them peer around walls or let them check behind doors so you know they're clear. If you're in a match where you have teammates who just run like chickens with their heads cut off, they're going to give themselves away with how loud they're being, so you can use this to your advantage. You can take out enemies that start shooting at these ridiculous teammates and get the kill. You generally want to stay close to your teammates, you really do. However, sometimes it's not a bad idea to take a vantage point high above your team so you get a good view of any potential enemies that might be trying to sneak up on you. Obviously, don't do this all the time, just do it when you get a team that likes to run everywhere without any caution. And finally, our number one tip on this list, sometimes it's just better to abandon your teammates. I know this isn't the most ideal answer, but if you have teammates that are constantly getting you spotted or are constantly going down and putting you in danger, save yourself. Don't just abandon someone after one mistake. No, give people a chance, but if they keep making stupid decisions, then you gotta get out of there. If a teammate died in the open with 3 enemies camping their revive, don't go for it. If your teammates are driving towards somewhere you know you're going to die for sure, get out of the car. Just leave them alone. Let them run into their own grave. The same goes for muting your teammates. If your teammates are just going to talk about nonsense in-game and never give you any callouts, it's not worth it to keep their chat on.
Well, I could aim way more precise with the keyboard than I can. You gotta think like I can move my keyboard faster, you know, or my mouse faster, right?
Yeah. Have you played that Hunt Showdown game?
Oh no, I haven't.
It's actually pretty fun, but it's kind of
How'd you
hard.
play
Like,
that?
I have it on the Xbox, but
Is it cross-platform?
Is it what?
Is it cross-play?
I think so.
Honestly, it's more advantageous to keep them quiet to be able to hear enemies that are possibly nearby than it is to hear them talk about whether or not playing on a keyboard and mouse makes them a better player. Alright, that concludes my top 10 tips to deal with crappy teammates. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like and comment down below what you want to see on this channel next. And if you haven't already, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon. That way you know whenever I post a good video such as this, and it helps this channel grow. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.